Thank you, Mr Speaker. Hatamarie. Sir, we're pleased to support this bill through a further stage. We do that with some regret. We regret the necessity for such a bill. One would have thought and hoped in an ideal world that amendments of this nature would be unnecessary, that people in the financial industry and giving advice to often ill-informed lay people would have the moral compass, their own integrity, would insist that they, or determine that they actually give good, honest advice and protect the investments and the assets of normal New Zealanders. But clearly this is not the case, and I doubt if there's a person in the House who doesn't have someone in their close circle of friends, their family indeed, who's suffered some loss as a result of what's just been quite well described as a Wild West, a cowboy approach to financial investment that we saw far too much of over the last couple of years. I myself and my extended family know of a young couple who had accumulated a small nest egg, which would have been a deposit for their first home, and that's gone. And the reason it's gone is they quite wisely invested in two companies that apparently were very sound, advertised on television with well-known figures fronting. That money's now gone because basically what they discovered, they invested in a daisy chain of debt speculation, overstated values that weren't really there, investments essentially that were simply taken away by people too greedy, too venal to be honest and upfront about what was going on. It's really critical that we do restore people's confidence in and trust in the notion of investment. People need to know that there is a reasonable security to investment, notwithstanding there will always be some risk, and that confidence has been comprehensively lost as a result of the rorts, the dishonesty, the greed and the misrepresentation that we saw far too much of over far too long a time. Not least of all in the business sector, it's important that New Zealand business has access to capital, and small SMEs in particular are identifying that as one of the issues confronting them. Access to capital is an issue. We need to encourage people with capital that it is a safe bet to put to invest and to have a reasonable expectation that that money will be secure. The select committee process, for me as a relatively new member, I have to say, was a very positive process. It demonstrated the power of select committees, that quite contentious, quite complex technical issues can be resolved to the satisfaction of people with quite different ideological positions. And I'd have to acknowledge the chair of the committee, Leanne Dalziel, who had a very useful focusing mechanism, kept using a phrase along the lines of what is the harm we are trying to remedy, which was actually quite a good strategy to keep bringing us back to the point of, what is the problem here? What is it we're trying to resolve? Who do we want to capture? And who do we want to not include in the provisions of this bill? And as a result of that, organisations like credit unions, who are very robust, very reliable, very straight-dealing organisations, are not unwittingly caught up within this legislation. We're not imposing compliance costs on organisations or indeed individuals who were not targeted because they have not displayed the sort of bad behaviours that we're endeavouring to overcome here. Organisations like the Citizens Advice Bureau made very good submissions identifying one or two instances where potentially they could have been captured by the provisions of this bill. Clearly not-for-profits like the Bureau were not the target. If they give incidental advice in the course of assisting people in the community, that's well and good. And the exemption of not-for-profits is a very sensible and a strengthening provision of this bill. There was discussion, for example, about what constitutes a sophisticated investor, recognising that you don't need to put too many protections around people who are perfectly able to look after their own interests. And there was some useful and informed commentary and indeed submission from individuals and organisations that helped us define who is it that we're trying to protect here and who is it who can actually look after their own interests and be left to get on with that. That's probably as much as I'd want to say at this stage, except again to reiterate we do support this bill, the intention of it, and look forward to seeing it progressing and to securing and protecting the investments of people who can expect much better and more reliable advice as a result of this legislation. Kia ora.